Welcome back to the JavaScript Essential Training Series. I am Mike King, your host, and in this tutorial we'll be talking about displaying JavaScript. So unlike many program languages, JavaScript does not have any built-in functions to display or print your code execution as we're going through and working on our code. There are many ways that we can work around this by displaying our data in different ways. One of those ways you've seen in our previous tutorials using the document.write method. But we also have a couple other methods that we can use. We can also use the windows.alert, inner HTML, which you've also seen, and the console.log message inside of JavaScript. So what I want to do in this tutorial, let's go in. I'm going to demonstrate how we use those, because we'll be using those throughout our tutorials to actually see the execution and how things are progressing inside of our JavaScript code. So let's move into our development environment and demonstrate what we just talked about. Alright, so let's drop out of our presentation and drop into our development environment. The first thing I'm going to do, let me go ahead and confirm that we've got our Apache server up and running, which we do. I'm going to go ahead and load up Sublime Text 3, which will be my text editor for this demonstration, and Google Chrome will be the browser I'll be using. First thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and do is save as. I'm just going to go ahead and save this as display.html. I'm in my template.html file. I'm just going to go ahead and do a save as display.html so that we don't overwrite our template file. And the first one I want to demonstrate, let me go ahead and demonstrate the window.alert method inside of JavaScript. And this allows us to use an alert box to display data. It's very simple to implement. I'm going to go ahead and bring this from our exercise files. I'm going to come down inside my container. And I'm just going to put in my script tags, which we know are required for any JavaScript that we're doing inside of our HTML document. I'm going to go ahead and save those changes. Let's go load up the display.html file inside of our browser window. And now you'll notice that we get an alert box that actually has the response from our script file. I've got a window.alert 15 plus 25, which equals 40. And when we actually loaded that particular page, we got an alert box that told us, hey, 40. And this alert could say anything that we wanted it to say. I'm just letting you know that it actually can use the operations inside of JavaScript just as well as text or anything else. So we actually have that displayed there. If I wanted the text file, I would just put it in parentheses. This is an alert from JavaScript. And we tend to use this quite often as we're writing our scripts to actually work our way through a particular area of a program, especially if we're having issues with it. We can actually trace certain areas of that particular execution. Let me go ahead and refresh the browser window. And you'll notice now we've got the text. This is an alert from JavaScript. So anything that we put inside the parentheses can be displayed using what's called the window alert method inside of JavaScript. Alright, so the next one we're going to look at is the document.write method inside JavaScript. And this one you should be very familiar with. We've been using this one throughout our demonstrations up to this point. I'm just going to come down right below those script tags. And again, opening my script tags. I could have, by the way, had these all enclosed in the same script tags. I'm just doing this for your benefit so that if you're following along and typing this in, we can actually keep these methods separated. But you notice I've got the document.write method, and again, I'm using operations 26 plus 26. Go ahead and save those changes. If I refresh my browser window, the first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to see that alert box because I still have it in there. And then it's going to go in and tell me what the document.write method is right inside the browser window. So it actually writes it into our browser window. That's the one we're most familiar with. We've been using that one quite often as we've worked through our exercises up to this point. And we'll probably use it quite a bit as we continue working through exercises inside of JavaScript. But again, so far we've looked at the window alert, or the window.alert method, and the document.write method. So now let's look at a different way of implementing the document.write method. Alright, so we don't have to acknowledge this alert every time I reload this browser window. I'm going to go ahead and make this a comment. Again, using our 2 forward slashes. We covered that in an earlier tutorial. Let's go ahead and save that change. This way, every time I reload the page, I won't have to acknowledge that alert. Because if I don't do that, I will have to acknowledge the alert. The next one I want to look at is a little bit different way of using the document.write. Again, I'm going to copy this from my exercise files. I'm just going to come down a couple of lines. I'm putting in a line break there so we get this on a separate line. And now I'm actually using a button element inside of HTML and triggering a document.write with an onClick event. I don't think we've demonstrated that up to this point yet in the tutorials. It is used quite often. I use this quite a bit as I'm actually writing live JavaScript for my applications. Let's go ahead and save the change. Let's refresh our browser window. Now you'll notice we've got the button. I've got the original document.write that's being displayed in the upper right hand corner, but I got the button. When I click the button, I'm actually going to get a new value inside that HTML element, and it's actually writing it right to my browser window. So if I actually comment this out so we don't see that response, save the change, refresh my browser window, all I'm going to see is the button. When I click the button, I'm going to get the response from that document.write method based on that onClick event. And again, I use this one quite often as I'm working through exercises or working through applications while writing JavaScript. It's pretty popular. All right, so let's look at another one. Another one that I use quite a bit, and we've actually looked at it already. Let me go ahead and copy this from the exercise files. They come down right below our button elements. And now I've actually created or generated an H3. And inside my script tags, I've got a document.getElementById, which you've seen quite a bit in the demonstrations up to this point. And this time we're using the inner HTML to actually display on our browser window or inside of our browser window. What I'm actually doing is I'm actually, again, using the operations inside of JavaScript to calculate a sum and put it inside that H3 element using the inner HTML method inside JavaScript. I'm going to go ahead and save those changes, refresh my browser window, and you'll notice now I've got that 150. My try it still works, but the 150 is the actually sum of this, and it's being placed inside the H3 element using the inner HTML method inside of JavaScript. And again, you see that one quite a bit already as we've been demonstrating it with a lot of the demonstrations up to this point. We use that one quite a bit also inside JavaScript to dynamically change not only the internal elements, the data inside elements in HTML, but we also use it a lot to work with styling. We can actually change CSS and a whole lot of things that we can work with using inner HTML and a couple other methods that are available in JavaScript that you'll learn as we work through the tutorial series. All right, so I'm going to look at one more. This one's more for developers than anyone else. The other stuff that we've been doing up to this point is actually seen by your users. The next one's actually seen as you're developing stuff. If you want to log things as your application is being developed, this is the one that we use as developers to log information about our applications. All right, so this one works a little bit different than the ones we've worked with up to this point in the fact that we actually have to use some developer tools to actually see the outcome of this. I'm actually going to copy this from our exercise file. I'm going to come down below my previous script tags, and I'm going to put in a new script tag, but I'm using the method now called console.log. And this is, and actually I'm going to change this. I was actually having it do an operation, but let me actually show you the way that I use this, because I actually use this quite a bit as I'm developing applications inside JavaScript. I will sprinkle console logs throughout my application development, and usually what I'll have it display is the value of a variable, because variables tend to change throughout the application of a program, and I'll want to track those changes as I walk through the application. And to make certain things are operating as they should be, I'll actually change the values, write them to a console log, and then I can actually go look at the log file and see how my variables are responding to the execution of the application. Let's go ahead and save all these changes, and I'll show you how we see these. If I refresh my browser window, I'm not going to see anything having to do with that console log message inside my browser. But if I open up my developer tools, and every web application will have some type, or every browser rendering engine will have some type of rendering tools with it, you'll notice that in this particular Google Chrome, I have a console. And you'll notice this is an error message that's coming directly from this console log. And I could have this displayed numerous times. I could actually track. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, Control-C on the PC, Command-C on the Mac. I could have this tracking throughout my application development in different parts of the application, and then writing things off to the log, letting me know where I'm at in the application and what's currently occurring. I use this a lot, especially if I'm having problems debugging an application. I'll sprinkle console logs throughout the application just to check things as it's being executed. So if I save this, I refresh my browser window, you'll notice now we have three different aspects, and it's telling me exactly where it's coming from, what the file is that it's from, display.html, and what line number. So I can actually trace this throughout the execution of my program. Those are the ways that we use most often to display information as we're writing JavaScript. The first few ways that we talked about, the inner HTML, the document.write, the window alert, all that stuff can be seen by your users. Console log is written more for the developer, because once my application's done and everything's running as it should be, I tend to take these console logs out of the code. I don't want them in there anymore. They're just basically for me, because normally when I'll put in a console log, I'll also put in a break to actually stop the execution at this point, because I'm actually doing something as I'm writing the application. So again, those are the ways that we can actually view what's going on inside of JavaScript as we're working with it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.